Hi everyone, my name's Matt, and recently Seagate reached out wanting to sponsor a video and challenged me to build a DIY home storage server featuring some of their high capacity drives, including this 30TB Exosem Enterprise drive and this 28TB Ironwolf Pro NAS drive. I was happy to oblige and ended up putting together an overkill do-it-all storage server with over 110TB of raw capacity and enough power and upgradability to do basically anything I could ever want to do with a home server. These Exosem and Ironwolf Pro drives both feature Seagate's awesome hammer technology, are rated for 24/7 use, and come with 5-year warranties. If you're interested in finding out more about these drives or purchasing one, make sure to check them out linked in the description below. I'll be talking about these drives more and testing them out later in the video, but for now, let me explain more about the build and what parts I went with. I went into this with a few goals. First and foremost, I wanted this to act as a rock-solid storage server with plenty of capacity and room for future expansion. So I wanted it to host files for stuff like a media server and even give the ability to edit videos directly off of it. Secondly, I wanted to be able to run a bunch of server-related tasks like game servers, virtual machines, cloud gaming, local AI, and even more. And while I did want to make this overkill, I didn't want to go too crazy, so please keep that in mind. With all that said, let's get into the parts I went with for this epic DIY storage server. The first thing I wanted to pick out was the platform, aka CPU and motherboard. This was probably the hardest decision to make. I was actually favoring single core performance over multi-threaded performance, so high core count Xeons and EPYC CPUs were both out of the running. Now, originally I wanted to go AM5 for the great combination of high single core performance, more than adequate multi-core performance, and good power efficiency. With that being said, there really weren't any motherboards I was crazy about. I was looking for a board that supported ECC memory, had built-in board management, so IPMI, and had plenty of PCIe expansion. The closest thing I found is this ASRock rack board, which checked a lot of boxes, but was micro ATX, which wasn't ideal, and I wasn't super crazy about the PCIe layout and configuration. So I decided to do a little more research and ended up stumbling upon this board here. This is the Supermicro X13 SAE-F, which yes is an Intel board, but it seemed like it would be perfect for this build. It has ECC support, IPMI built in, really good PCIe expansion, and even had double the SATA ports built in versus the AM5 board I was looking at. Now these are hard to find, so I ended up snagging one off of eBay for about $350, which sounds pretty expensive, but for a board like this is actually a decent price. Getting the board in, I found it was in fine condition, but the seller forgot the I/O shield, which I'm still waiting for to arrive in the mail. This board has 4 DIMM slots, solid back panel I/O, including a gigabit IPMI port and a 2.5 gig networking port. It has lots of PCIe expansion, including 2 16x PCIe 5.0 slots that is important to note will only be at X8 each when both are in use, along with 2 X4 slots and 3 NVMe M.2 slots. Again, this supports LGA 1700 CPUs, so I'm still going to get solid single core performance, but definitely higher power draw under load. To go into this board, I have an Intel Core i7-14700 non-K. This is a 20-core, 28-thread CPU that can turbo up to 5.4 GHz. It also has built-in UHD 770 graphics, which we will be taking advantage of for video encoding. This CPU offers plenty of single and multi-core performance, while also hopefully running a little cooler than its unlocked counterpart. Obviously, I think going AM5 would have been better, but I think the combination of this 14700 and Supermicro board is going to work out great. To cool the 14700, I'm going to use this Thermalright Phantom Spirit, which is a $35 air cooler and is the same as the super popular Peerless Assassin, with basically the only difference being this has an extra heat pipe. This big air cooler should work perfectly fine for this locked i7, and while the CPU did technically come with a free cooler in the box, trusting a 20-core CPU on this tiny thing is not something I'm interested in trying out. Now again, one of the big advantages of the Supermicro board I went with is the ECC support, which gives me the ability to use DDR5 ECC UDIMMs with an unfortunate cap at 4400 MHz. Regular DDR5 would work, but I paid the premium for ECC support, so I'm going to take advantage of it. There aren't a ton of DDR5 ECC UDIMM options available, but I found that Serve the Home had good luck with these V-Color ones. So I picked up a 2x32GB kit of V-Color ECC DDR5 rated at 4800 MHz. These are definitely a big step up price-wise compared to normal DDR5, But again, for a lot of people, the price premium for ECC memory, especially in a server build, is well worth it. 64GB should be enough for now, and you could always slap in 2 more 32GB sticks for 128 total in the future, or even go to 4 48GB sticks for 192GB of total memory capacity. So now let's talk about storage. For boot drives, I went with two 2TB SK Hynix Platinum P41 NVMe SSDs. These are solid Gen 4 drives that offer plenty of performance, and we'll talk about what OS I'll be installing on them later. In terms of mass storage, this is where the sponsor of this video, Seagate, comes in. For this build, I have a 30TB Seagate Exos M Enterprise drive, along with 3 28TB Seagate IronWolf Pro drives. Both these models are great for a server build like this one, but there are some key differences I want to break down. The 30TB Seagate Exos M is a serious piece of enterprise storage hardware. It's built for the same demanding workloads that hyperscale data centers rely on, but it's also just as impressive in a DIY or prosumer server. Thanks to Seagate's Hammer technology and a breakthrough 3TB per platter density, this is the first drive to hit 30TB in a standard 3.5-inch form factor, and honestly, it's kinda crazy just to have my hands on one. I was geeking out just holding and looking at this drive, realizing I was holding 30TB in the palm of my hands. Beyond capacity, the Exos M drives deliver the kind of reliability you'd expect from an enterprise drive. It's rated for 24/7 use with a mean time between failures of 2.5 million hours, so it's designed to run non-stop without compromise. It's also fairly efficient, offering up to 3 times better power efficiency per terabyte compared to typical hard drives. Performance is another strong point. While you might think there would be performance compromises with a hard drive that has this kind of density, the reality is this drive has rated transfer rates up to 275 megabytes per second, and average latency being just over 4 milliseconds. To test this out, I went ahead and plugged this drive into an external dock and into a PC, and ran it through Crystal Disk Mark, and was happy to see it was hitting right at its rated numbers. Alongside the Exos, I also use Seagate's IronWolf Pro 28TB drives, which are purpose-built for NAS and prosumer environments. Where the Exos focuses on enterprise solutions, the IronWolf Pro is all about giving creators, small businesses, and home labbers reliable, always-on storage. These drives also use Seagate's Hammer technology to achieve their high capacity, but they're tuned specifically for NAS workloads where consistency and RAID performance matter most. The IronWolf Pro line isn't rated for quite the enterprise workloads that the Exos are, but that comes with the benefit of them generally running both a little cooler and quieter compared to their Exos counterparts. With that being said, they're still rated for 550TB per year workloads and built for 24/7 use, all backed by a 5-year warranty, which means they're going to work perfectly in a storage server like this one I'm building today, which is meant to be running all the time. Performance-wise, these drives hold their own, with rated transfer speeds up to 285 megabytes per second. Again, I went ahead and hooked these drives up to a dock and a PC to test them out. Running them through Crystal Disk Mark, I was again happy to see them hitting right at their rated speeds, which when combining a number of these together in a RAID array, you're able to get some crazy performance, allowing you even to do stuff like editing videos directly off the array. You also get added peace of mind with the IronWolf Health Management, which integrates with supported NAS platforms to monitor drive health, plus there's 3 years of Seagate's rescue data recovery services included. For high-capacity NAS or prosumer servers, the IronWolf Pro 28TB is a rock-solid choice. Both these drives would be great to use in a home storage server like this one. It really just comes down to your budget and needs. The Exos drives are rated for more intense enterprise workflows and tend to run a little louder and hotter, while the IronWolf Pro drives are optimized for RAID arrays and home/prosumer use cases. And it's also good to mention the Exos line and IronWolf Pro line offer drives from as small as a few terabytes all the way up to 30TB. If you're interested in either the Exos or IronWolf Pro line of drives, make sure to check them out at the links in the description below. Again, I have 4 of these drives, 3 of which are 28TB IronWolf Pro ones, and 1 is a 30TB Exos M. Ideally, I'd use 4 drives of the same capacity, but it's not the end of the world and will still work out great. It also gives me a few options for configuring these, whether that's putting them all in a single VDEV or even doing something like mirrored pairs, which I'll get more into in the software section of this video. To power this system, I'm going to be using a Corsair RM750E. This is a high quality modular ATX power supply that should provide plenty of clean power to the entire system while not being too overkill for the current configuration. There are some redundant ATX power supply options, but those are, from my understanding, pretty expensive and pretty loud, making them not so great for a home environment. Now, there are some PCIe devices going into this build, but let's first talk about the case. I was heavily considering going with the Fractal Design Define R5, which I've used before, and at a little over $100 is kind of the GOAT of home storage server cases in my opinion. With that being said, I'm a big fan of the cases Johnsbo makes, as I have my personal storage server in the N4. So I decided to do this build in the larger Johnsbo N5, which supports ATX components and has 12 hard drive bays. This is a big case at around 50 liters, but it looks nice in my opinion, is decently easy to build in, and supports a ton of hardware including eATX boards. The front panel is magnetic, and pulling it off reveals the 12 drive bays that all have backplanes for easy installation. So I could just install these silicone pieces and handles to each of the drives and just slide them right into place. And as you can see, all 114 terabytes of storage is taking up just 1/3 of the total drive capacity, meaning if you filled up all 12 slots with 28 terabyte drives, you would have over 330 terabytes of raw capacity. Now let's talk about the other PCIe devices I'm going to install besides the two M.2 drives. The first is actually a GPU. I decided to use one in this build to allow for playing around with stuff like cloud gaming and local AI. I went for an NVIDIA RTX 5060 Ti, as this was the cheapest 16GB NVIDIA card you can get, and the reason I went with an NVIDIA card is a lot of the local AI related workflows, especially image and video generation, basically require an NVIDIA GPU. This isn't the most powerful card ever, but it would give you the ability to play around with all the stuff that I just mentioned, and you could always upgrade to something more powerful in the future. Finally, I added in a Mellanox Connect X3 dual 10GB network card that uses SFP Plus connectors. This is technically an X8 card, but I installed it in one of the open X4 slots, as that'll still give plenty of bandwidth for the single 10GB connection I plan on using for testing. Altogether, these parts make for a pretty overkill but still upgradable DIY storage server with over 110 terabytes of raw capacity. Obviously, there are a ton of different ways I could have went with a build like this, so if you would have went with something different, let me know in the comments below. In terms of software, in the past I've run TrueNAS on bare metal, but for a system this powerful, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, and the more obvious route is installing a true hypervisor and going from there. So I installed Proxmox, which I'm trying out for the first time. I installed TrueNAS in a container, which was surprisingly pain-free and passed through both the hard drive and the Intel integrated graphics so that I could run a media server within the TrueNAS container. I also quickly set up an Ubuntu server VM that I installed the AMP game panel onto, which again was very easy and straightforward to do. The main thing that I had trouble with was GPU pass-through. I've been able to pass through and recognize the 5060 Ti within a Windows VM, but I haven't had much luck on passing it through to a Linux VM, so if you guys have any recommended resources on GPU pass-through, let me know in the comments below. Proxmox is definitely a step up in complexity for me, but I've been seriously impressed with all the capabilities it offers, and being able to create VMs, mess them up, and just restore them to a previous point is pretty fun to play around with. I didn't set up too much within TrueNAS, but I did decide to set up the drives as mirrored pairs. This should give good read performance and allow the system to be upgraded 2 drives at a time. Sure, it's not the most space efficient setup, but I also don't think it's the worst idea ever. I set up a basic SMB share and did some test transfers from my PC with a 2.5 gig connection, which it was easily able to saturate. Now the 10 gig card is passed through and working on the server, but my PC is again currently limited to only 2.5 gig, so I didn't have a way to truly test the full possible transfer speeds of this storage pool. With that being said, read speeds should be able to saturate the full 10 gigabit connection. Also, in terms of power, at idle, this system pulls around 85 watts from the wall, which definitely isn't great, but also isn't awful when you consider all the hardware inside of this system. In terms of individual drive performance, I did again want to point out that I hooked up and tested both the Exos and Ironwolf Pro drives in Crystal Diskmark, and again found they gave very close to their theoretical max performance output. All in all, I'm pretty happy with how this DIY storage server build turned out, and had an amazing time playing around with both the Exos and Ironwolf Pro drives. It's crazy the storage density you can get with these drives, which is all thanks to Seagate's Hammer technology. They come in a ton of different sizes and offer great performance, along with superior reliability and 5-year warranties. For more information and current pricing on these drives, make sure to head to the Newegg links in the description down below. Either of these models will work great in a home storage server like this one, and there are a ton of capacities to choose from. Thanks again to Seagate for sponsoring this video, and I think it's time to wrap things up. If you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing, and as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.